nationally recognized personal finance educator, speaker, and Amazon bestseller author of Start Smart, Finish Rich, which reached the #1 in the book selling. For 27 years, a gentleman named Joe has taught personal finance at UAMS College of Pharmacy. He's helped thousands of graduate students develop practical strategies for building wealth and achieving financial independence. Stick around for this episode. This gentleman's name is Joe Baker, the author of Start Smart and Finish Rich.
Recorded live right here in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's time again for Larry's Rants, Raves, and Reviews. And now, back to Larry.
All right, we have the pleasure of having Joe Baker on our podcast this episode. Joe, thanks for showing up. It's quite our privilege.
Well, thank you, Larry.
It really is. It really is. Now, I've got to tell you, our mutual friend Shane Lester is the one who introduced us. Came into lunch over at Bobby's, the restaurant that I own, and it was such a pleasure to have you and get to know you there. And we've been looking forward to actually having you on this podcast. I love where you started out in your book, the story. It says, I didn't grow up with a financial plan. I grew up with an outhouse.
That's right.
What a line. Right. What a line.
And it's true.
Yeah, from Emerson, Arkansas, population 393, I believe your book said. So you started from there, huh?
Yes, I did.
Didn't have plumbing till you're age 9.
Well, we didn't have an indoor toilet.
Okay.
We had running water in the kitchen. But the outhouse, and I always tell the story that, I didn't know we were poor because, when you're poor and everybody's around you, they're poor, you don't really realize it. And I thought we were kind of well off because it was a 2-holer. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, we must be well off. Of course, I don't ever remember sharing it with anybody, but it was a 2-holer.
I love it. You said the first time that you sensed that we might not have much, you went into that story and everything. And I've got to tell you, that line really kind of rings in my head because, Joe, I got to be honest with you, I was raised in a little town in Kansas, Baxter Springs, Kansas. And I don't know that we were poor, but we just lived on what my dad made.
What a concept.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah. I wish we had more of that, but, my parents, I wouldn't call them poor, but they certainly didn't have a whole lot. We lived in a 3-bedroom ranch-style home, and that was after we remodeled. Grandma and Grandpa saved or gave us some money after they passed away, and my dad was able to remodel the house and build on a little bit, make it a little bit larger. And so, but you obviously started out, and I love this, the way you started out your story in your book, because it doesn't matter where you started. It kind of matters what you do in between and where you finish. Is that right?
That is so true. I always tell the story whenever I'm speaking to any group. I will tell them the outhouse story because I'm going to say, no matter what your background is, mm-hmm. no matter how far down the rung of the ladder, economically speaking, you can make it to the middle or to the top.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to stress with my students whenever I speak.
Yeah. I think it's true, and I wish that in America we would teach more of that concept, that it doesn't really matter where you started. Just get on board with life and start making things happen for yourself.
Right. And what's interesting is, like I said, I've been teaching for 27 years, and I will have students that will come in from other countries, South America, Central America, Africa, and they outdo the American-born
mm-hmm.
students.
Yep.
and I say, gosh, where has that work ethic gone academically and with your hands and all of that? But it is amazing. They come in and they work hard because they know how special it is, and sometimes our young folks kind of miss out on that.
Isn't it sad to think that someone can come into America, and work their butts off, make everything happen, and they become very successful. But us Americans stand back and want to whine because something isn't given to us or given to us for free. We don't have the chance. We blame it on something.
Right.
What did Zig Ziglar used to call it? The loser's limp. When somebody would go down for a pass on the football field and they would miss it.
Yep.
And then they'd get up and what they do? They limp.
Start limping back.
Yeah.
Everybody be
back.
laughing.
That's right. That's right. It was the old loser's limp. And I've got to tell you that I just feel like that we could be so better off by pushing us Americans instead of entitlement, instead of giving it to me for free or I don't have the chance. I got to tell you, man, we all started at a place to where not all of us was born with that silver spoon in our hand, right?
Exactly right. Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And I don't know if there is a correlation. The more your parents have, the less what would I say, motivation to succeed. But I have observed this for years and years in the classroom. I can see the students that have come from nothing, that maybe come from somewhere else, but through their parents who said education, 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 work, work, work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we have failed, where we have failed, I don't know. But I've just been a sideline observer of that.
Which one's more important, education or work?
I
did work.
I know.
Me and education just did not get along.
I tell you, I had a college education in business, and this was in the late 70s, and I was literally out digging ditches in the oil field. As a matter of fact, in 1980, when you remember we had the big heat wave here,
right.
Over 30 days, well over 100 degrees. I was out there digging ditches because at the time I thought, I'm waiting. What was the movie? I think it was one of the family vacation movies where it says Cousin Eddie is waiting for a managerial job. Well, I guess that's what I was waiting for, but I soon found out I'd have to get out and work hard and find it myself.
Yeah.
You got to do what
you do.
There's nothing wrong with work. I don't care if you're bagging groceries or stocking shelves. Work is work, and it is admirable.
I told Daddy, I said, Daddy, I really don't want to go to college. I just want to go to work. Well, he was glad. He didn't have to pay for college.
Saved him money.
Hey, go ahead.
Right.
Go for it.
Well, my dad was the type that he was always fearful of anybody with his kids having a college education. That sounds crazy, but he says if you have a trade, you'll never go hungry.
Yep.
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't very good with my hands.
Right.
The only plumbing I knew was an outhouse, so I guess I had to get some kind of white-collar job.
John Maxwell always used to talk about pay attention to your A students, they'll come back and be your deans. Pay attention closely to your B students, they'll come back and be your professors. But pay attention greatly to the C students, because they'll be the ones to come back and build you your buildings.
Wow.
Now, I'm not against education, but I think there's some truth in there because entrepreneurship and education doesn't quite sometimes mesh up. Obviously, you went and got you majored in business. You earned an MBA.
Before I forget this, can I
go?
Something I hadn't even thought about when you brought that up. In my daughter's book, the cheat code, How to Win with Money Before Adulting Hits Hard.
Yeah.
she talks about, is the value of a degree what it should be? Mm-hmm. And she goes in and she shows about how much money you'd have to have up front if you have to have student loans versus going immediately to work as an electrician or some other trade.
Yeah.
It has an opportunity cost there.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, if you majored in liberal arts, and both my daughters did, so I can speak here, and you go out and borrow $200,000 for a liberal arts degree that you're going to end up making $35,000, $40,000, that is not a good opportunity cost. Now, I'm not telling anybody what they should buy or purchase or do. I just want you to understand that there is a cost to any decision that you make economically.
Yeah.
And in her book, she brings out that it is there are some things.
I'm laughing. I'm looking at her book right now.
Okay.
And I like this. I'm looking at the chapters. Cool car, empty wallet. That is so true.
Yeah.
They start making money, and then all of a sudden they go out buy a car, and that's where their money goes. You know, where to put your first paycheck. Budget like a boss. Man, this is all right down my alley.
She did a good job. This is a good segue if you don't mind, Larry. When I was 5 years ago, when I was finishing up the manuscript for the first edition of Baker's Dirty Dozen, she came home from teaching. I think she was teaching at Plastic Academy at the time, but she came home and she has let's put it this way: the only personal finance education she had is I made her take a personal finance course at Ouachita Baptist University, and it was so theoretical. It wasn't like, the little nuts and bolts of finance. It was just way out there on theory. And that was the only C. As a matter of fact, that was the only non-A that she made at Ouachita. She made a C in personal finance. So fast forward, when I wrote the manuscript for the book and I was about to turn it in, she said, "Dad, why don't you let me read the book just to make sure," because it is filled with stories. I like to have stories from different people. And she says, "Well, I know you'll be telling stories. Let me read them because I know that you're not, for the lack of a better term, politically correct. And I don't want you to get in trouble with anything." So she started reading it, and she was laughing at a lot of it. She said, "That's funny, but it can't go in the book." And she became my Chat GPT before there was Chat GPT. She would read it, and she'd say, "Well, I don't understand this. I don't understand what a Roth IRA is." And I said, "Well, it's in the book. Did you not?" "I don't understand it." So I would have to explain it to her, go back and forth, tell her what it was. She'd say it back to me, and I'd say, "That's it." She'd say, "Hold on a second. I've got to rewrite this." So she rewrote it for somebody in their mid-20s to understand. And literally, and I know we use that word incorrect, but she literally rewrote every paragraph to a language of the 20-something. And she did such a good job, I had to put her on the front of the book. Well, she got so motivated. She knew very little about finance because most kids, quite frankly, they don't want to listen to their parents. They'll listen to a stranger tell them a story about finance or something. But, parents, that and unfortunately, a lot of parents don't want to share about finances, which is not good in my opinion. But she understood after we discussed about the time value of money, and I don't know if this is good or bad. She has become so frugal and so tight with money that it is incredible for somebody that's 38 years old now and how much wealth she has accumulated. And she developed all this knowledge by just going back and forth. And so last year, she says, "I want to write a book And even though my name's on this book, I did not write it. Now, she borrowed some concepts from Start Smart, Finish Rich, but it's her book. And she used the book in class to teach. And she is amazing. She has done an amazing job. And she knows how these students think in this age of screens and short attention spans. So she kept the chapters short, to the point, took out a lot of clutter, and she filled it with stories just like we did in this book. And because, quite frankly, people like to read stories about other people, and if we can learn from other people's mistakes, it's better than us making them.
Sure.
So anyway, she did that, and I'm very proud of what she has accomplished. And so anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that. No. But I didn't want to forget that.
No, I think that what you've said is a lot of meat, because here's what I would tell you. Us boomers are really one of the most successful generations there's ever been. Okay? I think. And I think that history will prove that. However, a lot of the younger generations don't really care for us. And there needs to be some kind of a bridge that we could communicate our wisdom and our knowledge to them in a way that they would accept it and understand it. So what you just said about your daughter taking and practically rewriting the book, in story, some sense, I think makes sense, because you have the simplicity, and I use that word not in a negative tone.
No. That's a compliment.
I use that word in a very big complimentary way, because I said, and I told you before we even started recording, I have not read your book, but I fully intend to. I've only had it for a couple of weeks, and I'm finishing up some other books. But what I did is I perused through both of these, and I'm like, the simplicity of this is what people really need. I can tell by
the chapters, by the chapters, labels.
Yeah.
And I will say, there is nothing new. The information I have in the book, there's nothing new.
Right.
It's just the way it's packaged.
Yeah.
It's packaged and it's like I tell my students the first day of class, I say, listen, my goal for you this semester is that you will never sit in your chair and say, when will I ever use this?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm not going to feed you with anything that I don't think you'll need.
Yeah.
And because we're not going to waste that time. And I said, I'm going to make it so simple, and we're going to fill it with stories. And I jokingly, I say, I like stories. I compare myself to Jesus, except my parables are a little bit easier to understand sometimes. But I say, stories really can bring it home. Because I have former students that will come back and they won't bring up a concept, but they will say, hey, remember that story you told about such and such? And and it will have a little hook there, financially speaking.
They will remember that, sure. Let me go back to your book, because No, I love what we're doing here. In your book, you say at age 30, well, first of all, it says you look at a financial timeline as a roadmap, and I share this with others. At age 30, you got married with more debt than savings.
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, I had no savings. So
there you go. You said, yep, we started in the red. Age 31, didn't we all?
Yeah.
Yeah. Age 31, you paid off everything except for the mortgage. Mm-hmm. Age 31 through 50, you stuck to our plan. Now, we can camp here for a moment and talk about these things. In fact, I underlined about 4 things here. It says you stuck to our plan, saving steadily for retirement.
Yeah.
Now, I've got to say that probably, you can agree or disagree with me, even though I say us boomers have been more successful than probably any other generation, I think a lot of us has failed in this first area that you talked about, saving adequately for retirement. Would you agree or disagree?
Well, the statistics, prove it, because there were so many that that, and I have this in the book, about what percent of those over 50 years old that have very little in savings for retirement or for anything for that matter.
Yeah.
How can you save and you're drowning in debt?
Well, that's a good point.
There's so many people out there that are just drowning in debt, and they think that credit cards. I learned this a long time ago. Jerry Savelle taught it, and I still remember the exact place I was sitting. He said he said pull out a card. He said credit cards are not an extension to your paycheck. And man, that still rings in my mind.
And today, we're talking about 30-something% interest.
And it used to be me and Donna had pulled ourselves out of debt 3 times back when we were younger, credit card debt, and it was $7,000 was a huge amount, and it took us months and months and months, and we did and I didn't even know about Dave Ramsey. We did the Dave Ramsey principle. We paid off the small one, paid off the next one, and then got it paid for. We did that 3 times, but now it's not $7,000. Now it's $20,000 or $30,000 is the average debt. Standard debt for somebody that's they say I'm in debt. How much? 30,000. That's normal now. It's not 7. It's 20 and 30,000. How can that's, and then the interest.
Yeah, 30.
It's crazy.
30% interest. Whatever you bought with that, you're paying triple more than that. It's crazy. Whenever I do a talk, I usually talk about the time value of money. Get out and stay out of debt, and then lifestyle creep. Those 3 things are so important because in my situation, I speak to or I teach students, pharmacy students, who when they graduate at 24, they'll make $120,000 on average in Arkansas. Now that's roughly 94% of the other Arkansans in the state, but yet they're going broke.
So you teach pharmacy students about finances.
Yes.
You know who you need to teach, and that's doctors.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. I did have Dr. Westfall. He was the UAMS for a while. He had me come in and speak to the ophthalmic, if I pronounce that correctly, residents.
Right.
And, pharmacy students will have $150,000 in student loan debt. Well, those folks have $250,000, but they have their own. There's something called White Coat Investor, and they're doing a good job with the medical students. But just anybody making over $100,000, one of the latest statistics is 51% of those making over $100,000 are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah,
and you're right. You said something earlier. How can you save for retirement when you're getting eat up by your credit cards today? Well, that's self-inflicted wound, but it is happening. It's so easy to creep up because, just a little bit more. I had a pharmacy student. Well, let me back up. I get the Arkansas student loan people to come in to speak to I teach a 3rd-year students. So unfortunately, I don't get them soon enough. But they talk about the student loans and they show them for the first time, evidently, that if you borrow $50,000 or $100,000, by the time you pay the interest after 30 years, how much, it's kind of like a house, with the mortgage, how much you're paying in interest. And I had one student that came up to me. Now, she was a P3. She said, I'm in trouble. I said, in pharmacy? Yeah. She said, I'm already have borrowed over $100,000, and I didn't need to because I live at home in Bryant, and I've been borrowing the maximum. Now, these loans are accruing daily at 8%. And so by the time I get to the students, if I had them in their first year, or if I had an orientation, I'd say, listen, I'd show them a balance sheet. I'd say, you spend $1,500 on a spring break vacation. This is how much it's going to cost you if you use your student loan money.
Yeah.
And just go down the list. And I'll say, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money, but there is an opportunity cost, and you're going to suffer later on.
Yeah.
But by satisfaction today. So,
Dave Ramsey calls it beans and rice.
yeah, well. Anyway, that's one of my pet peeves.
Well, I got to tell you, and I will say this, and nobody has to live by my morals, my standards. Please do your own, okay? But here's what I can tell you. You're listening to a man speak right now who had credit card debt 3 times in his life. Okay, now I only self-confess my,
Okay, I thought you were
confess
talking about
to whatever you
read
want.
in my book.
No. 3 times. And I've got to tell you,
it's easy to do. Isn't
the
it?
third
Get out
time,
that credit card and charge.
the third time, I pulled my credit cards out, I ran them through the shredder, and I said, I will never own another credit card again. Right there's my wallet. I just pulled it out. Feel free to check me. But I do not have a personal credit card. If you're walking around with a credit card in your back pocket, I say you've got Satan himself in your wallet. People say you can't travel, Larry, without it. You want to bet? I've been to New York. I've been back. I've done everything. I go anywhere I want. Just got off vacation from Florida. Everything was paid cash. I do not own a credit card because I cannot trust myself. I cannot control myself, and I will not even try. And I told God, if you will just be merciful to me and help me get out of this mess, I'll never go back in it. Okay? So that's just me. Credit cards, I think I hate them. And people go, I get this money back. I got these travel points, blah,
yes.
blah, blah. Yeah. Hey, let me tell you guys, I charge $15 for a plate lunch. That's all in, tax and everything, for a plate lunch at Bobby's, $15. And do you realize that about 2/3 of those are purchased on a credit card? And I stand there every day of my life and run those credit cards thinking, how much is this $15 plate lunch going to end up costing
it's
you?
Costing $30.
It will. And it breaks my heart. Now, that Randy, let's go. I'm going to go back. I said I had 4 things that I underlined out of your book, saving steadily. And dear Lord, folks, this is only on page 2 of his book, okay?
Right.
So I'm telling you, there is a well of knowledge in this thing, but this is only on page 2. He said, we stuck to our plan, saving steadily for retirement. Number 2 is living below our means. Now, folks, we can set up camp here and talk for the next 4 hours on this. You say, how do we keep from hemorrhaging all of this? How do we keep from going in debt? Well, now, here's a novel idea. Live within your means.
Right.
Joe, you want to speak to that in any way?
Oh, you're right. That we could do a whole show on that.
Yeah, we could.
Well, it goes back to there's an economic term called lifestyle creep. Now that a lot of people will laugh when I use that term, but I always tell them, I say, well, Google it and look it up. But it sounds like some shady guy that comes around and has a weird lifestyle, but it's not. It's a term for when as people make more and more money or come into more and more money by whatever means, all of a sudden their spending changes. Things that used to be a luxury are now a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And it just changes people. And I see it all the time. And I list a bunch of items on the slide on the presentation that I usually give of all the things that used to be necessities. Dog walking. I didn't even know that was a service. Jewelry, Netflix. Oh gosh, I mean, there's just so many. Flying first class or just anything that we say, I've got more money now. We might not even say that. You may just say, hey, I can afford this, and I deserve it.
Yeah.
That's the biggie.
They
They think you graduate pharmacy school or PT school or even college, and you say, I have worked hard for 4 or 5 years, and I deserve a new truck. And so, by golly, go out and buy a new truck.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, well, I want a nice house. You end up buying something as good as your parents as far as size. And before you know it, all of a sudden you're paycheck to paycheck. I could tell you story after story about some younger folks that they're just buying beyond their means.
Yes.
And like I said earlier, over 51% of those making $100,000 or more are paycheck to paycheck. And I tell them, I say, listen, I'm not telling you that you can't do these things one day. You can. If you take care of your finances in your 20s and early 30s and do the right things, you'll have more money than you can imagine later on, and you can do whatever you want. Now, I will say this: I was about to say I'm in my 60s, but I'm not anymore. But we've developed such spendthrift habits. It's hard to spend money, even though we got plenty of money to spend. If there's a coupon for $10, like I called up T-Mobile the other day, and I said, listen, you're going to have to do something on this bill. And I wanted them to waive an activation fee on a phone I got. And she says, I can't do it. I said, throw me a bone. Is there anything you do? So she gave me a $10 credit. Well, $10 is $10 in my book. But I could easily say, I don't want to mess with that. But that has become a mindset. And unfortunately, a lot of the younger folks have not developed that. And I know parent after parent that has bailed out their kids on credit cards and some other areas. And but anyway, back to lifestyle creep that you were referring to. We all say live below your means. And it's a concept that we've all heard before, but in practice, for whatever reason or reasons, it is difficult to do. And it may be psychological, but...
Well, the old saying, us older guys will know this, keeping up with the Joneses.
That's right.
Okay, remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
You've got people that are out here, everybody thinks that husband and wife both have to work to make a living, okay? I'm not going to berate anybody. My daughter works outside of the home. She's very successful. She's a therapist in Frisco, Texas. My son-in-law is an accountant at a food broker. They do well. But hasn't our families, the family package, somewhat eroded over the years because both parents are outside the home? Remember the old latchkey kids, saying from years ago? I'm afraid that we have adapted our mindset. You've got kids that are making $200,000 and $300,000 a year that think that they want to start out in the same home as mom and dad has today after living a life, and saving and working hard and everything. They want to start out. Dear Lord, I remember when Carol and I first got married. Do you know how we actually we had a two-bedroom rental home. Mm-hmm. I went to a garage sales and bought, furniture. I'm talking a couch and chairs and end tables, coffee table. That's how we furnished our first home. And we were perfectly happy. But now, dear Lord, if you would mention that to children, they would think that you're an absolute idiot.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, but I just don't buy into the thing that everybody has to have. You know, I remember a 1,800 square foot home that we had years ago. I wish we had that today. I really do. But everybody thinks, oh, I got to have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, you know, for a couple of people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a put down, but folks, if you're living above your means, you're harming yourself, your future, and your children's future.
And this is not a male or female. I tell the pharmacy students, and 60% of them are female these days.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, in chapter 2 of my book is to make sure, I'll paraphrase it, is make sure you and your significant other are on the same financial page. And it is so true. But and I will talk, and I'm aiming towards the lady, soon to be pharmacist, and I say, there is a distinct possibility you're going to make 3 times what your husband's going to make. In my book, there is nothing wrong with him staying home. Now, the male ego may not allow that, but that is an option there. And so chapter 2 kind of explores that. Are you able to work with your significant other? Now, it's funny, when I did get married, or when we had our kids, we had our second child, and I looked at it economically. We calculated, my wife was teaching, and she, after the dollar amount, whenever we put the pencil to it, she was going to net $100 extra a month by not staying home with the kids. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't want somebody else. Now this, I'm not trying to step on any toes here, but I said, I don't want somebody else raising my kids for $100 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so she stayed home for 4 years. And whether it was good or bad, I enjoyed it. It was, well, let's put it this way. Whenever I'd come in from working, I was tired, but she'd just hand me the kid and just leave. I don't even know where she went some days because she had just had it. But I wouldn't change that at all. But you're right. These days, they think they've got to start out big.
Do you know that to this day, my wife will have somebody walk in. In fact, there was a young lady that walked in just a few months ago to Bobby's for lunch, and she walked up and she goes, Miss Buttram, do you know who I am? She goes, I think I do. Mm-hmm. And she said her name. She goes, yeah. She said, I spent so much time in your home. Because, see, my wife did not work outside the home, mm-hmm. and she would go pick up the children. And, dear Lord, there was a pantry full of snacks, and she would go pick up the kids from school and probably bring home 6 to 8 more, and they would all come to our house. It was the hangout house, and they would eat cookies. She would bake cookies, for them and different things, and they all absolutely fell in love with Carol, my wife, because she treated them that way.
And that was one of them.
Absolutely, and it was one of them. And she said, would you come out and just visit with me for just a minute? And it meant so much to her to kind of reconnect with mm-hmm. Carol, and Carol to reconnect to her. And, those memories are things that Carol would never want to give up, being with our children. Now, what did I do? I worked even harder and tried to be more successful to honor my wife with that.
Right.
Now, if my wife wanted to go out and make, $300,000, $400,000 a year, I don't have an ego. I guarantee you, I could have stayed at home.
I would have loved to stay home with the kids because even to this day, I'm one big kid myself. I
would have put a playpen on the back of my boat and said, come on, kids, we're going to go fishing. I could very easily do that. And then, another thing that I underlined in your book, it said, avoiding new debt.
Yeah.
Now, I got to tell you, folks, here's what I would suggest to people. You will have problems in life until you learn to hate debt. Let me put it this way. Let me use just one stronger word. There's a thing but called hate, but then you've got to learn to loathe debt. Loathing something is kind of hate on steroids, and I hate debt.
And I don't like it when they use terms, and well-meaning people use there's good debt and bad debt. I say no. All debt is bad. Now there's some that's necessary debt, like you're buying a home within reason, and also maybe higher education if it's the right degree and where you're headed. But other than that, unless it's a business, but personally.
Yeah,
I'll give you those, but that doesn't mean you have to live it with the rest of your life. We run into people that are surprised that we have no debt, and I try to instill with my students and wherever I speak. I said, you get rid of your debt, you will be amazed at how much money you find. It's incredible. The interest is really eating a hole in people's pocket, and the credit card's the biggest example. 30-something%. At least in Randy, you remember in Arkansas we had the usury law,
right?
So you couldn't go over the 10%. That's gone. But now I don't think it's ever been this high, and in student loans even. The pharmacy students are paying 8% and 9%. Now,
that's
if I had $1 billion, I think I might go in the student loan business and let's see, I could get 4 or 5% easy, then charge them 5 or 6%. I'd have a nice little spread and have a few defaults in there, but give them a copy of my book and say, hey, I want to be paid back. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know how the Federal Reserve and all that sets interest rates, but
I build houses, and I was building for 3 doctors at one time. They were fairly well off houses, and they wanted to buy a lot of stuff on Amazon and different things and all that. And of course, we got to keep a record of it for their mortgages of what was spent. So I just said, okay, here's the business. I have a business credit card that I use for business. I pay it off every month. And at that time, it was a Southwest card. And I said, just take a picture of the card and just use it and just tell them the job name. So it went along. And then all of a sudden, they said the credit card's not working.
Oh, boy.
I said, what's wrong? I said, the limit on it is $30-something thousand. And I called the credit card company and I said, well, what are y'all doing? They said, Randy, your limit's $35,000 for the month. I said, yeah. They said, you're already at $75,000 for this month. What do you want us to do?
And that was one house? Or
no, that was 3 houses at one time. Well, immediately, I got the money out of the construction loan, which was no problem. And they were, because I was charging brick and different things that Acme used to. They don't do it now. They used to take credit cards. No fee, no nothing like that.
Right.
Of course, now everybody starts charging fees, and you can't do it as much. But we racked up a million miles in Southwest. I wasn't even trying.
Right.
So credit card. Here, I tell and I teach a little bit of finances. I tell my students, either credit cards are going to control you, or you're going to control them. There is no middle. There's no middle.
Yes.
You're going to control them, or guess what? They're going to control you. And that's the way I tell my students. We're having a meeting tonight, as a matter of fact. Now, I tell them that, mark it down, write this down. That's one of the things I say, write this down, and that's one of the things they write down. So.
Wow. Something I was going to ask you. Now, you build a lot of high-end houses. I've known you for a while. And I'm talking to Randy here.
Yeah. Larry's going to have to wait.
Yeah,
here.
Larry.
I'm hanging out. I'm hanging out.
Raise the old Cosmonita flag.
Give me that camera.
Yeah. So, aren't you amazed when you drive up and down? Say, I live on Acadia. I don't know if you know where Acadia is, over on Chenal.
Yes.
And I am amazed, not just on Acadia, but I go on down to how many young folks are moving into these Chenal houses.
Oh, I know.
I'm talking about 20-something years old.
Yeah.
And these houses are now approaching $1 million. And
I don't build anything under $1 million. Mine's $1 to $3 million now.
yeah, but aren't you amazed
amazing.
at how many young people are you as amazed as I am?
I am, and I don't get involved in the people's finances.
Right.
I let the banks do that. So I let the banks vet them. Because I don't want to say, hey, fill out this credit report, or I don't want to say, let me look at your last 2 years' tax returns. So, instead of me taking out the construction loan, we both take out the construction loan, so their name is on it. That way the bank has the opportunity to look at all their finances and see, what all they do, what they have. Some of them are okay. And then some of them, the bank says, you don't want to touch this, and so that they're leading me.
They're protecting you.
Yes, they are. They're protecting me and the loan and themselves, because they don't want to do that loan and then all of a sudden this $2 million house I'm stuck with.
And how many of those $2 million homes could you walk into that there are rooms that are absolutely empty because they can't afford to furnish them?
Right.
Or open up the fridge and see what little food they have. Mm-hmm. Because we've got things turned around and mixed up.
Or what the thing is, you go there and they don't have blinds on their windows because they didn't plan for that. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, blinds are not cheap because they want the plantation shutters or the automatic louver blinds, and they're $4,000 or $5,000 a pop, and then you got 10 windows, so that's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on your whole house for blinds. So guess what? You got sheets up.
Mm-hmm.
On $1 million house, you got sheets up.
Yeah.
So what do you do then?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, closing the house, man.
So this whole thing of living within your means really is something that you need to pay attention to. Now, I know we're going to have to land this plane fairly quickly here, but again, I'll go back to looking through your book. It screams with simplicity, and I mean that in the highest compliment that I could give you.
I'm a simple person.
I'm going to use it in my class.
There's two things that it says here in your book, and again, folks, I'm only on page 3. I just have to pay attention to what I'm doing. Page 3, it says, this book doesn't contain magic secrets. In fact, most of the advice here is shockingly simple. But listen to this line that he put in his book. But financial literacy is still shockingly rare.
It's a shame.
Because people don't want to pay attention. We don't want to do what's right. I have to assume that that's what you're alluding to.
It's funny. I'm going to take liberty here.
Go ahead.
I almost, in some classes, I do say this, but you can get in trouble in a secular setting. I say this, and I have said it before. I say it's like getting to heaven. It's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
But very few people are going to get there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure I've gotten talked about behind my back, but that's the way this is. It's really simple.
Oh yeah.
But for whatever reason, very few people do it.
Yeah. It really is. And I again, I've ignored. Joe, I wish that I could throw life in reverse. If I could take the knowledge that I've got today and throw it in reverse, 40 years or so, 30 years.
I'd buy Google and I'd buy
knowledge
Apple.
is wasted on. What's the old saying? Something is wasted on the youth. But it is true. But what was interesting that is not in the book, but it is kind of in between the lines, and you'll know who I'm speaking about here. But when we were about to get married, we were going to Fellowship Bible Church. And Robert Lewis, I don't know if you know Robert Lewis. You know Robert Lewis. Anyway, he's pretty well renowned on marital counseling and all that. Well, he was going to perform our marriage, and he said, well, you're going to have to go through 6 weeks of premarital counseling. I said, oh, man.
6 weeks.
I'm not even thrilled about getting married, but now I've got to go through 6 weeks of boot camp, and it was boot camp, by the way. If you get married by Robert Lewis, you're going to stay married, and then 40 years to prove that. But what he had us do, you were talking about planning earlier. We had to complete a roadmap, if you will, financial roadmap, plus other goals and all that.
Sure.
And, I didn't think anything about it. I threw it in the file and came, and I keep a lot of stuff. And I said, do you know that 15 years later, I discovered that and pulled it out and cue up the eerie music here. Even the number of kids we said we wanted, we had.
Really?
It's just something about putting it in writing, but the financial part, it was amazing to put it down on where we wanted to go and how we needed to do that.
Wow.
Now, that's not in the book, but it should have been.
Yeah.
Maybe
That's
in the third
the next
edition.
book, yeah.
The third edition, we may have to include that. But it's not just by happenstance, And I tell my students, I say, listen, if you do the things that you need to do in your 20s, it'll make life so much simpler later on. As Lindsay says in her book, your future self will thank you for doing this work now.
Yeah. Well, folks, I can tell you that it has been a pleasure to have Joe on our episode, and I would encourage you to go to his website, themoneycheatcode.com, themoneycheatcode.com, and I would encourage you to go and get one of his books, Start Smart, Finish Rich, and his daughter's book is on there as well, The Cheat Code. I would love to do that, and honestly, let me read this one last line out of your book. It says, this book is designed to bridge the experience. And I love this because it goes back to something that we alluded to at the very beginning of the show. It's designed to bridge the experience of the baby boomer generation with the passion, the purpose, and the energy of the younger generations.
I know who wrote that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It wasn't me.
It was your daughter's.
Oh, I will say this last anecdote.
Yeah.
We're about to send off the manuscript, and I've read it 1,000. This was 5 years ago. I read it 1,000 times. And I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and I read through it. And I said, man, I read it out loud. I said, this is so good. I've read it so much and did so much, I couldn't even remember what all I'd written. And I said, man, I don't remember writing that, but it is so good. Lindsay said, you didn't, I did. I said, okay. But that was before Chat GPT. And that liberal arts education came into being. Plus, they're never going to have to depend on us. They're going to be financially on their own legs. So, what better feeling with a parent knowing your kids are doing the right thing financially now? They don't always do things correct for other areas, but at least that area is okay.
Yeah.
Makes me feel better. But not because of what I had said, but because of, both kids, even the one that's not named on the book, she helped edit the book because she's doing her dissertation at UCLA and be a doctor, be the first doctor in our family, but it's not the doctor that helps people. It's one of those philosophy doctors. So anyway, but anyway, she did contribute, and she learned a lot.
Joe, don't call me and ask me to edit that out because I'm leaving it in there. You're the one that said it.
That's okay. That is okay.
Joe, let me say again, it's been our privilege to have you, and I sincerely mean that. And we would love to invite you to come back. I know that you're extremely busy. I know that you are guest speaking a lot. You teach at the university. You go and have different podcasts and different things that you're a guest on. But we would love to have you come back, and we can take and drill down through a specific topic. I'd love to have you back.
Have a rant or a rave
there you
about
go.
anything.
There you go.
I don't know which one we had today. I will say it's not as much in speaking or teaching. It's more, am I going to physical therapy? Am I going to heart rehab? Am I going to a doctor's appointment? It's all those things now. So.
And I met your wonderful bride, Brenda,
yes,
the other day at Bobby's. He brought her in. Hey, here is a gift for being on our show.
Great.
One of our T-shirts, Larry's Rants, Raves, and Reviews T-shirts. I hope that you'll wear that proudly.
I will.
I want to give that to you.
Thank you.
As a gift. And folks, I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I have, because seriously, I would really love for you to go and get both of these books. Again, go to the website. Those of you that are on video, it's on your screen right now. Go visit the website and order some of these. I would suggest that you order one of the green books, Start Smart and Finish Rich, for yourself, and get one for your children, and then pick up the blue book, Cheat Code, that his daughter authored as well. But I think that if you will pay attention and what we've tried to say, just a few tidbits here. This is kind of an introductory to Joe. Again, we're going to get off the air, and we're going to twist his arm and coming back and doing some more with us. But I hope that you will have a great day.